Hello everyone, my name is Mandeep. Now in this video we'll talk about why most students face problem in GMAT data sufficiency questions. So first we'll discuss what are the main reasons that we are not able to solve data sufficiency questions, and second then we understand how to actually solve the data sufficiency questions, or how to overcome those limitations. Now when I talk about data sufficiency questions, now I'm assuming a few things that you are aware of the basic concepts of quant. Second, uh, you know how to solve a data sufficiency question. You're aware of how it looks like. So now I'll talk about what are the reasons that most of the student, it's not that if your quant is weak only then you face problem with the data sufficiency question. Even if the quant is good, you would see that people with good quant, they are not scoring 50 51, they are scoring around 46 47 48, which is around 60 65 70 percentile. They're not scoring 90 99 percentile. And if you ask them, mostly they come up with the reason that it was a silly mistake. So in this video we'll talk about why so many students uh, uh, or commit so many silly mistakes. We'll talk about that. So first let's understand why do we struggle with the data sufficiency question. So we'll talk about the most common mistakes a student makes in data sufficiency question. So if you look at the first mistake, it says to start solving question without even understanding what exactly is required. Now this is not the problem with the data sufficiency question, probably this is the problem a student faces in the entire GMAT, whether it's verbal or quant. Now what happens, some of the students have I would say wrong assumptions about the GMAT. So let's talk about GMAT quant. So normally they think that they have to attempt all the questions and they have to get all the questions right to get good score in quant. That's not true. Probably if you, let's say, out of 30 there are 31 questions that you need to solve in 62 minutes. So if you are able to solve, let's say, 26 27 questions and you're getting around 90% accuracy, you easily get around 49 50. That's around 22 23 questions out of 31 questions. And even if you go higher, probably if you attempt, let's say, all the questions, still if you focus on the accuracy, and trust me, there is no problem of time in quant. So if you just go slow, then also you will be able to attempt 31 questions and just focus on the accuracy. The other thing that we are not aware that you don't have to spend exactly 2 minutes per question, because there are certain questions which will take around 3 to 4 minutes, and but there will be some questions which you can solve in, let's say, 30 seconds 45 seconds. That will be there, so your time will always average out. But most of the students, they are always in a rush to get over with the section. They don't focus on exactly what the question is asking and what they need to do, and this rush doesn't let them to focus. So first get the right understanding. You don't have to solve all the questions or get all the questions correct. Okay, once you have that, there will be a sense of calm. Focus on 100% accuracy. Okay, now when you start reading the question, when you read the question, what happens is, I've seen that many students just read the question and simply start solving it. They don't even think exactly what is asked, because normally what is asked is not what you need to find, you have to drive it. So what you do, when you read the question, first make sure you convert the question in your own words. When I say in your own words, see, GMAT will always play around with the language. That is how GMAT makes the question difficult. GMAT will not ask you probably any difficult concept. Concepts will be simple, basic concepts, but the way they ask makes it difficult. So when you read a question, make sure you convert that in your own words. When I say in your own words, convert that in your own language. Okay, so make sure you convert every question in your own words. When you do that, then give yourself a few minutes break. Not minutes, I would say few seconds break. When you read the question, let that information gets absorbed, and then start thinking what exactly this question is asking, from which topic of quant they have asked you this question, and what exactly they need. So if you get sufficient time in thinking, probably you will see that 80% of the questions you can solve orally in quant. You don't need pen and paper to solve the questions. Yeah, for basic calculation you need pen and paper, but otherwise you don't. But I have seen that most of the students, they start writing whatever they read, they start writing. You don't have to write everything. Okay, yeah, there are certain things you can write, but majority of the times you don't have to write. So read the question, convert that in your own words, then give yourself few seconds or a minute's time to actually understand what you need to find. Okay, so that's the first step. So mistake is that you don't read the question properly. How you solve it? Read it properly, and I just explain how you read it. The second mistake that students do is that they read the question and statements together, and then they just get confused with the information. See, always read question first. Don't look at the statements. Okay. So once you are done with the question and you have analyzed the question and you have understood, okay, this is what I need to find, then look at the statements. Second, don't read both the statements together. Okay. So look at one statement at a time. Go step by step. Okay. So look at first statement and see is it sufficient or not, and then go to statement 2. The other mistake that students do is that they carry the information of statement 1 with themselves when they read statement 2. So read statement 2 independently of statement 1. Okay, and then look at statement 2 if it's sufficient or not, and then you go to the next step whether we need to combine the statements or not. So don't read question and statements together. That's wrong. Okay, first read the question, understand what you need to find, and then go to the statements. And even don't read the statements together. Just read one statement at a time. Next, they normally normally you would have seen that in this quant questions you have certain variables where you have to plug in the values for those variables and drive the results. So what I have seen that the students drive the results without even verifying. When I say verifying the results, that they don't put in the values to verify that what they are thinking is correct or not. They just draw conclusion that okay, this is sufficient or this is not sufficient without even actually plugging in the values. So make sure and again the main reason is that they know that they can solve it, but there is a rush. They are in a rush to get over with the question, and that rush make them commit so many silly mistakes. So make sure go slow, don't worry about the time. So when you have variables and you have to drive the result, plug in the values, see is it sufficient or not. And sometimes you forget about the values that you need to plug in. For example, when we say x is even, we think about okay 2 4 6, but sometimes we forget about 0. 0 is also even, but 0 is an exception, so we don't consider 0 and we say that it's sufficient. But let's say when you put 0, it's not sufficient. Or sometimes say if I say x is a non-positive integer, so when I say it's non-positive integer, then what values comes to your mind? Think about it. So you normally forget 0 in that. So always go slow and think, is there any exceptional case I need to or exceptional value I need to plug in, because there are always exceptions. Okay, and we forget about those exceptions because of the rush. So always plug in all the values, go slow and go step by step. Don't try to jump the steps. Last but not the least, they don't eliminate options step by step. So I have seen so many students when they were calculating, they know that answer is C, but they mark E. or sometimes they don't need to combine the statements, but still they combine it and they mark wrong options. So whenever you are solving in data sufficiency, always use elimination process. So normally I think if you have started GMAT data sufficiency questions, so normally always write down your answer choices like this: A, D, B, C, E. So I'm just taking two scenarios. Let's say it's A, D, B, C, E. So either way you can write, doesn't matter, this way or this way. So normally this is how I explain to my students. So you go to first statement. So either statement 1 is sufficient or insufficient. If statement 1 is sufficient, eliminate BCE, and if statement 1 is insufficient, eliminate AD. And then if statement 1 is sufficient, you go to statement 2. If statement 2 is sufficient, or it could be insufficient. If statement 2 is sufficient, your answer is D, else answer is A. So this is how you go step by step by eliminating the options. And if I just go to the other side, when 1 is insufficient, you go to statement 2, and again there could be two scenarios: 2 is sufficient or it's insufficient. If 2 is sufficient, your answer is B, else you eliminate B. So when you eliminate B, at that time you combine the information of statement 1 and 2. So when you combine it again together, they could be sufficient or insufficient. If together they are sufficient, answer is C, else answer is E. So when you follow the step-by-step elimination process, so you will not make any mistake, because understand, your mind is in a rush, it's not properly focused. But if you just have a habit of just eliminating step by step, probably you will not commit such mistakes. So again, if I just sum up, always read the question properly, convert whatever you read in your own words, and before you look at the statements, understand what exactly you need to find. Don't read the statements together, read statements one by one. And when you read statement 1, consider it independently. When you go to statement 2, do not carry the information of statement 1 with you. Okay, consider statement 2 independently. Third, whenever there are some variables and you have to plug in values, make sure you give sufficient time, think if there is any exceptions that you need to consider. So put in all those things, and if you just give sufficient time, you will be able to recognize what are the exceptions, and you will put all the values and check it out. Third, make sure that you follow the elimination process, go step by step. With each step, I'll start eliminating the options. So if you just start doing this, even with the same knowledge, you would see your accuracy will increase, because you will stop committing those silly mistakes. And trust me, silly mistakes is the major reason that students fail to score 14 and 50 or maybe 51 in GMAT quant section. I hope this was helpful. Thank you.